Good afternoon. I'm Eric Hansen. Welcome to the program Reformation Times, brought to you by fivefoldinternational.org. We know that the portal you've joined us with is through iworshipcenter.org, where this program is originated in the heart and the spirit of Fivefold International, an organization that licenses and credentials individuals for ministry. We encourage you to check out the website at fivefoldinternational.org. You'll be seeing some lower thirds during the program that will direct you there and other various places so you can get all the information that you need. We're going to be with you for the next hour or so. So we welcome you in the name of the Lord. It's a beautiful warming up day here in Central Illinois. No matter where you're at, we welcome you in the name of the Lord to the studio here this morning. Well, today we have a very special guest. She is the director of Fivefold International, and she is my daughter. Her name is Hannah Schafer. Welcome to the program, Hannah.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
I'm glad that you are here. Today we're going to be addressing two topics. We're going to do it in two different pieces today because these are the things that you are involved in Fivefold International and in the church as well, where you serve as the director of the school and the director of missions. So tell us a little bit about the missions department as it was maybe when you came, what it looks like now, the trips that are being planned this year for the ministry.
Yeah, well, when I came on a couple years ago, it was a missions trip here and there whenever we, had people interested in going. But my big heart was, hey, if I'm coming back to work with Fivefold and with iWorship Center, I really want to do missions and focus on missions because I believe that's God's heart, is going and helping the widows and the orphans and going to the world. So when I came back, I started offering about 3 trips a year, and that's what I've been trying to do since. So this year we're going to New Mexico, to Navajo land. We're also going to Guatemala to help build a house for a pastor, and we're also going to Brazil with some of Fivefold International's own missionaries, Dennis and Vanessa Nichols. So it's going to be a great summer.
Good. Well, tell us, let's you and me have a conversation here. I know that I'll ask you some questions that you know that I know the answer to because you're my daughter. So, but for the sake of those that are just tuning in so they get a feeling for your level of involvement where missions is concerned, recount to me your first experience with missions.
My first missions trip was when I was 10?
9 or 10.
9 or 10, yeah. And we went to Guatemala up into the Petén. And if you don't know what the Petén is, it's pretty intense. It's up in the mountains. You go through
of Guatemala.
Roads that aren't even roads, in Guatemala. And we went up, we did to this village that I don't even know if they had seen white people before, but did clinics and spent time with the kids and just had some really great times. So I was really young at that point, so I just sat there counting the pills for the missions and stuff like that. But it was a great experience, and I've been hooked ever since. So
I found that when you came back from that missions trip, that your life had kind of changed. That there was something that happened inside of you. I remember that for the first several months upon your return, you, in your evening prayers, because we prayed together as a family every night, that you were thankful for carpet, for air conditioning because it was so hot while we were there. Just everyday things that maybe a 9-year-old takes for granted. You were exposed to a whole nother world of people that weren't like you. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that experience.
Yeah, it was pretty abrupt at a night when you're 9 years old and you go and you see all this stuff that's just completely abnormal to you. You might see a commercial on TV, but you're like, that's not even in your mind. But being like, wow, these people don't even have cement or they don't have carpet. Like, they're sleeping on dirt, and they don't even have food to eat. And at 9 years old, that was pretty in my face. And so I started praying for them every night for them to have these things and being thankful for what I had. And since then, I've just continued that. I still pray for them every night. So,
being the director of missions for the church and for Fivefold International, tell those folks, we'll get into some particulars here in a minute. I'm again just kind of giving them an opportunity to know you a little bit. Tell us some of the countries you've traveled to.
With missions trips.
Or just in general.
Okay, I was like, because I just love traveling in general. But for missions, I went to Guatemala probably 10 times. I've done Mexico a couple times, Thailand, and the sex trafficking there. In Israel, we did some prayer and all that kind of stuff in Jerusalem. Yeah, I mean, I've really traveled to all these different places. I mean, throughout Europe to Australia, all these things. It's just, I mean, you don't have to travel to be a missionary, but it does. I mean, I just am so hungry for the different cultures and all of that I've just absolutely, I can't get enough of it.
Great. Well, we're grateful to have you on the team and being in charge of missions. Now, let's get into some particular questions that are already coming in. Again, if you have a question, right there on the right-hand side of the little box that you're watching on your screen, you're going to find a chat room. And Nick Jones is manning the chat room. So if you want to just put a question in there, he's sending those to us and filtering through those. So they'll get to us, and we'd be more than happy. I can see that they're already beginning to come in here. But I want to talk to you about who can go on these mission trips that you've already mentioned. And then we're going to talk about what it is to be a missionary and those types of things. But I want to talk about these trips in particular for a moment. Guatemala, Brazil, and the Navajo Indian Reservation, all happening this summer. You said you went when you were 9. How young can someone go on one of these trips if a parent is watching right now and they say, I want to impact my child the way that you were impacted?
Yeah, well, for the New Mexico trip, what we're going to be doing is doing a VBS, which a Vacation Bible School for the kids there at the Indian Reservation. So there it is going to be 14 years and older, and that's if your parent goes with you. I don't want to be responsible for your 14-year-old child because that's a liability. But if you're 14 years old and your parents wants to go, it's a great trip. You don't need a passport, and it's a great way to introduce your kids to, other people. The things that other people might not have that these children take for granted.
So as long as there's an adult that's going, as young as 14.
Years is good on that
What about Guatemala?
Guatemala, they set it at 12 years old with parent because this is actually the team that I went with when I was 9, so I love it. There's some great people, Wayne and Jenny Munson, but that's 12 years and older because, I mean, the men usually go and they're doing the construction work, which we've had women go in on that too. That's awesome. I love doing that, but for a whole week, I kind of sore at the end. But they do medical stuff. We go house to house and pray for people, and the kids get the opportunity to play with the kids in the village, and it's a great. I mean, it's amazing. I would recommend that for
How much is that trip?
That trip is $1,350, so $1,350.
What does that cover?
That covers your flight there, your food while you're there, your housing while you're there. It pretty much covers anything you can think of besides shopping and your own food in the airport.
Okay, so it's an entire week. So they have to, from when to when? Do you know? It's like
it's August 16th to 23rd.
So $1,300, $1,350. You said covers the entire week, everything all inclusive except for your spending money.
Right.
Okay, and as young as 12.
Yep.
Okay.
But the Navajo one's only $850. That's why I think it's such a good thing if you want to bring your kid.
And no passport.
And no passport, so you don't have to go through that process and that expense. And also, $850 is a great, initiation into the missions.
Okay, and the most expensive trip is to Brazil?
Of course, Brazil, just because the flight itself is pretty pricey. But that one is $2,500, and we're going September 10 to 17.
So you have some time to save.
Yeah, so you have some time to save for that one. But that's going to be great. That's a lot of hands-on. So on that one, we're requiring you to be 16 years or older with parent, just because, if you don't know, the area we're going to be going to really faces a lot with sex trafficking, women in the bar, that kind of scene. And so every day we're going to kind of be faced with that R-rated material, and that's not something we really want to subject the kids to.
Right.
But if a 16-year-old's mature and, has the heart for God and wants to go help, then...
And mom and dad are going.
Yeah, and mom and dad are going, then that's something. But we'll also be doing treasure hunts, which if you were tuned in for Levi with the evangelism one, with the evangelism Reformation Times, and you know about that. But doing evangelism on the beach, which I can't complain about. So that trip I'm leading, so I'm really excited. So it's going to be good.
Who are we working with in Brazil?
It's going to be Dennis and Vanessa Nichols. They are 2 missionaries from Fivefold International who, if you don't know, Vanessa is originally from Brazil, came here and worked here for multiple years, but always knew that she wanted to go back to Brazil and be a missionary. So her husband, and 2 of their daughters have moved back there and are doing it full time and loving it. So
these are 3 short-term missions trips that you don't have to be a missionary per se to go on these trips, but you're doing missionary work. I'm reminded of where Timothy was, do the work of an evangelist. You may not be an evangelist,
Yeah.
but we're all to do the work of an evangelist. To preach the word may not be that we all stand in a pulpit and preach, but our life should be demonstrating the word. So let's get into some of these questions that are coming online. Again, you've joined us for Reformation Times. I'm Eric Hansen. I'm the founder and director of Fivefold International. Hannah is the director of our school, meets every Monday night, and new classes are coming up soon. You can get more information online at fivefoldinternational.org. So the 3 missions trips, let's kind of set those aside, and let's talk more about now this call to be a missionary. Talk about the difference between just going on a trip and actually doing it as a missionary.
Yeah, like you were saying with the evangelist, it's the same type of thing. It's, is this something you're willing to give your life fully to, and it becomes your job, just like Levi did. I mean, Levi doesn't do a day job. His day job is being an evangelist. And so
let's interrupt for a second and just say, to answer some of these questions, do missionaries only exist overseas then?
No, they exist here in your city. I mean, there are people that you would be surprised they don't even know about Jesus and his unconditional love for them, and for you to be able to express that day in and day out, and seeing your city as a mission field, seeing your co-workers as people that you have the opportunity to share Christ with, that's an opportunity to grow in your work. I mean, if you don't do that day in and day out, whenever you go overseas or whenever you go do these things, it's going to be very out of your normal nature, which it's not meant to be. This is who we're called to be, is to share the good news and to share Jesus' love. So that's what we're all called to do.
So we're all called to be a missionary everywhere, but some people say, I want this to be my full-time, everything devoted towards this particular thing. We would call those people missionaries. Interesting to note that, in Ephesians 4:11, we have apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers. One of those categories is not missionary, because I think we're all supposed to be missionaries no matter where we are, whether it's here in the States or like Dennis and Vanessa in Brazil. So here's a question. I don't have a lot of money, but I do feel called to go on missions trips. Someone doesn't have the $1,300 to $15, the $800. Talk to somebody through the process of how they might be able to get the funds.
Well, you aren't alone. A lot of people don't have the money to go, but the good thing is that when you're living a life as an example and witnessing to people and sharing the good news, or even if you aren't, if you're just living, with Christ inside of you, that people see that and people want to be a part of that. And so I'd obviously encourage you to start off with one of the less expensive trips, like the $850 for Navajo land. I would encourage you to do that, because honestly, when you think about it, I mean, if you save $50 a month, for however many months it takes, if you do that, and even I've encouraged people to send out letters, not to just go hand them out, to everybody at church, but to actually take the time, make a letter, and close a pre-addressed envelope that says, hey, if you want to support me, here it is. I already have the stamp. All you have to do is put the check in and mail it. And that's what people have been doing for Navajo land, and people honestly love convenience. And so if you want to do these things that people love to help, people love to feel like they're a part, and that when people can't travel themselves, they love to support other people to go.
I think what you hit on there with the letter is important, because sometimes, oh, you're going to go to Brazil. Oh, you're going on a vacation. They say that's a vacation. Well, no, I'm using my vacation time, but I'm going and I'm dedicating those 7 or 10 days specifically to reaching the lost with the love of Jesus. And here's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing this. We're going to be doing that. And so people that get the letter then realize that you're just not going to Guatemala or the Indian reservation to have a mini vacation, and you're asking them to pay for it. And that prayer is as important as finances. So if you don't have the money, you can still try to go. But it's important, I think, for people that you're asking to know that you've got some skin in the game, that you're using your vacation time, that, I've got half the money already, but I'm believing.
And that's really powerful. I mean, I've always encouraged people, don't have all these people pay for your trip. If you're really wanting to go, you should be willing to come up with money to go, that you aren't banking on everybody else paying, but that when you pray, and if this is God's will for you to go, which it is his will for us to go into the world, that he's going to provide. I'm not saying if he doesn't send you $3,000 in the mail that he's not God. I'm just saying that if you believe that you're called to go on one of these, I believe if you're willing to take the initiative and go after it, that God's going to show up.
Let me ask you a question. Do you know, and I'm not aware of the answer to this question, do you know of anyone that has said, I want to go on this trip, I don't have the money, but I'm willing to work, because when we're just talking about being a slugger, but I'm willing to work at it, that has not been able to come up with the money? I think through the years,
so.
People have had rummage sales, people have made things and sold those, they've done all kinds of, if you really know in your knower that God said, I want you to go on this trip, you're going to come up with the finances to go.
It's very true, because I mean, if you have the initiative to do it, if you really believe God's going to do it, but you aren't willing to put action towards your faith, that's not faith. I mean, faith is with action. And so being able to say, I believe God's going to show up, so I am going to do a rummage sale. I am going to go and, mow everybody's lawns this summer to make that extra money, or do what I can, that God will show up. And then people see, hey, they're doing this to go on a missions trip. Holy smokes, they're working to go work.
That's the works that's added to faith. That I'm reminded when Peter got out of the boat, he didn't say, well, show me how I can walk on the water first. You have to get out.
Right.
You have to say, I'm going to do this. And I'll tell you what, if people have not been on a missions trip, they really have a different view of the world.
They do.
How did getting outside of the country change your perspective?
I mean, it makes me very thankful for where I'm at. It makes me very thankful for where I was born, for what I have. And so many people say that, but until you actually go and experience it for yourself, I feel like it's hard to understand whenever we say, let's go on a missions trip and it's going to change your life. Everybody's like, no, it's not a big deal, but it really is, just to be able to go and see that. It completely changes the way you act at work. You're like, man, I'm thankful for a job now.
Right.
Or I'm thankful for these things. And it's something just really powerful.
The American population is, I don't want to, I'm guessing in the dark here about 300 million people. There's 7 billion people in the world. We are a pretty small percentage of the world. Mm-hmm. The rest of the world just does not live like us.
They don't.
We supersize everything and have tons of ice and get chaperoned everywhere we go, and that's not how the rest of the world is. And so, we're going to move a little bit towards women in ministry with this question, because you are in full-time ministry. The question here before us is, how do you know if you're called to be a full-time missionary versus just go on these missions trips? And this would, I guess, lend itself to somebody just doing ministry and then somebody being in ministry such as yourself.
I think it comes down to, God calling you and knowing when you're called, because if I were to say, whenever you go on a mission trip and you don't want to leave, then you're called to be a missionary. But that's not the fact, because every trip, they cry, I don't want to leave these kids. And that's not what it's about. If that was everybody would stay. Everyone would stay. But actually realizing, coming to the fact of, this is going to be my life. I'm willing to give up everything for this, and it to be something that nothing else can satisfy. And to say, you know what, God, is this something? And honestly, I'd encourage you to go on a 3-month trip, first before you commit to it, because everybody's good for a week. Everybody can handle not having their phone for a week.
Couple weeks.
Yeah, couple weeks maybe so. But once you get to 3 months, this is your new reality. And knowing if you're still comfortable within that or whether you're not is a different story.
And I think there's a difference between being sent and someone who's just went.
Right.
I have personally seen, I know you have as well, people just say, oh, I'm going to go do it. And they just go off and do it, and they just went. They weren't sent. There is the power of being sent, and that's being submissive, not a popular American word, but being submissive to some leadership, where you would go to your pastor and you would say, hey, I really am feeling called to do this. Would you support me in that? Maybe not necessarily financially, but would you send me, lay hands on me, bless me in that? And I think there's power in that.
Definitely, I would agree,
yeah. All right, so listen, we're going to take a break here, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes. We have a few things we want to talk to you about. I'm Eric Hansen. I'm the senior leader of iWorship Center, but the founder and director of Fivefold International Ministries. Check out the website, fivefoldinternational.org. Also, our school. Hannah is the director of our school. We're going to talk a little bit more about missions when we come back, but we want to jump into this idea of women being in ministry. Is that legit? And if so, how do you get in ministry? How do you deal as a woman in ministry? And we as men, how should we interact with these ladies who are in ministry? We'll be back in just a moment.
Would you like to be a credentialed minister? Is God calling you to a deeper relationship with Him? Then log on right now to inquire about Student Ministries Diploma, Pastoral Studies, Music Ministry, Worship Leading, Ministry Studies, and so much more. Inexpensive and only one night a week. Log on right now to fivefoldinternational.org for all the details and to register for Fivefold International School of Ministry.
Hi, I'm Eric Hansen. I am the founder and director of Fivefold International Ministries. Check us out at fivefoldinternational.org, where you're going to find information about our upcoming conference that happens every year. This year it is the first 3 days of August. We've got John King, an anointed, powerful preacher. We're excited to have him, and Dr. David Remedios from Louisiana, two anointed preachers, and some very exciting things that are happening at the conference this year, along with a banquet for those who are credentialed. Again, fivefoldinternational.org is the website. Check it out after the program today. We are talking with Hannah Hansen, Hannah Schafer. Hannah Hansen used to be her name, as she is my daughter, but she got married a year ago, just recently celebrated her first anniversary. Very excited to have Ryan in the family. Hannah is our director of missions. She is also the director of our School of Ministry. And she does a lot of other stuff around here too, where office management is concerned, organizing things. She is a bona fide preacher and leader, a woman in full-time ministry. And so we thought it'd be fun to have you come and talk about what it is that you do, how it is that you got involved in ministry. I know you're a preacher's kid, but beyond that, how was it that you moved from, hey, my dad's a preacher, to I know that this is what I want to do?
Yeah, I mean,
talk about that process for a moment, I guess, and then we'll answer some questions here.
Yeah, I think it just comes from, I was raised in it, so it's pretty much the only thing I know. But it came from me trying other things and never being satisfied. It was, man, if I could just do this, or if I could just do that, and knowing that all that could be satisfied by me being in ministry, by me working in a church, by me going and doing the works of God. It's like I would try to always do that and other things, but it was never satisfying. So wanting to grow more, wanting to learn more, trying to figure out what to do after high school was just kind of like, I don't know what to do. But I decided to go to Bethel, which...
A ministry school?
Yeah, ministry school in Redding, California, which is with Bill Johnson, Chris Valentin, Danny Silk, all of those people. So it's a really good school. It was awesome. And so being out there for a year, and honestly, initially I went wanting to get wisdom from the church and bring it back to this church. Not really going for myself, but going just to get wisdom for the church and things to incorporate here. But it was really powerful because God was like, no, like I'm going to come and visit you. I'm going to come meet you where you're at. And so that first year was just really God coming and showing up in my life. And it's so easy to believe certain things because it's what we're taught. It's the way we were raised. It's the things our church always said. But actually realizing why you believe what you believe is something that is so powerful, because you can't be turned away from something that once you have a reason for knowing it. And so being able to actually know why you think what you think is really powerful. And so doing that and then deciding to go back for a second year to learn how to lead from this new mindset that I had was awesome. And so bringing that back here and obviously telling you, like, I want to come back and I want to do missions, but also being able to equip some of the teachings that I learned while I was there into the School of Ministry that Fivefold has is awesome. And it just, I couldn't be satisfied doing anything else. I mean, I do my hobbies and my other stuff on the side. It never ceases. I'm never not busy, but I love it, and this is what I'm here for. So
women in ministry. I would not have been happy if you would have gone to a place that didn't embrace women in ministry, because I think women in ministry is vital. If women are not involved in ministry, and we look at this thing as a fighting force, if we eliminate women, we lose half of our fighting force. And so I think it's important that you went to a place that embraced women in ministry. I think it's important that these people, those of you who are watching today, go to a place that says women are embraced in ministry. But that's not always the way that it is everywhere.
Yeah.
Have you encountered any of that?
Yeah, definitely. Where, I could list off examples, but just even at the fair, going by all those tents, the little ones with
People handing out tracts.
doing all that fun stuff. So I always like going over and being like, hey, and encouraging them and being really nice. But like a couple summers ago, I went up and I said, hey, I'm going to school and I'm going to be a pastor and I'm in ministry and all this. It was just like, I don't even know how to explain the look on their face, but they were just absolutely disgusted and continue to question me and tell me that women aren't supposed to be in ministry and stuff like that. And so wishing that I knew then what I do now, to be able to have a better discussion with them would have been really nice. But to think about, even single parents, if you think about it as an analogy, single parents, when you have a mom, when there's not a dad in the picture, the mom by default is filling the role of a mother and a father. She has to do the things a dad would normally do, but she also is trying to do what her as a mother should be doing. And so she can't fully be a mother and she can't fully be a father because she's trying to fill both roles. And I feel like that falls into ministry as well, that when there's a church that is predominantly male or all males,
only male leadership,
is that they can't fully lead as men because women aren't there to lead as women, and that we all are created in God's image. I am and you are. So knowing that us together equals God's image, that you need a woman and a man to fully portray God and who he is, and that if you don't have women in the picture, that only half of God and who he is being portrayed, and that telling men, hey, if you empower this woman to lead as a woman, and that's something that's a whole different story.
we got to talk about that.
Because so many guys are like, okay, you can lead, but you better lead the right way, which is leading as a man.
Okay, wait. You're getting fired up. Because you just used some phrases that we may not be accustomed to. You're saying in a male-predominant church environment, there might be those that say, okay, women, you can lead, but you best lead like we do as
Right.
men. But you're saying that women would
are
lead
women. You aren't going to lead like a man.
in a different way. Explain that.
Yeah. Okay, so, I don't think I need to go into how women and men are different. Men, if they get upset, they probably react in anger or frustration.
If guys get mad at each other, they punch each other in the arm and
it's done.
And it's done, and that's
but
over.
for women, it's generally more emotional. There could be tears shed. There could be all these different things.
Which we as men would perceive as a weakness.
Right. And so for it to be, the woman's having a bad day and it's, hey, are you on your period today? Or hey, this, or hey, little things like that. But
Right.
it's, that's how women are. And so for you to expect a woman to lead with the tenacity of a man, or to be able to do those things, that you have to realize that women bring something to the table that men don't, and men bring stuff to the table that women don't, and allowing both of them to do that.
How can a male predominant ministry team, say like we have here, we've got a number of women, and so forth. Do you feel pressure to be more, in light of this conversation, do you feel pressure to be more manly in your behavior, to be accepted and to go with the flow, than embracing perhaps your femininity?
Yeah.
You
sometimes.
do? You do.
I'm not saying like, oh my gosh, I feel completely just,
Right.
whatever. But, sometimes it is easy because it's, when there are a lot of guys and you're with the guys, it's like, oh, you're just one of the guys and you're seeing, a fart joke or, things like that. And
Yeah.
it's funny, but sometimes it's like, no, like I don't really care to be seen as one of the guys.
Right, I'm
And
a female.
I'm a female and I just want to be respected and have normal conversations, but sometimes it's seen as one of the guys or things like that, which isn't bad all the time, but just knowing that you still are a woman, like you don't have to act a certain way to fit in with the general leadership. I don't know.
I see. Question coming in, how do you thrive in a male-dominated team?
Honestly, it's hard sometimes. You have to have men on your team who are willing to empower you. And that's the thing, is finding men who are willing to empower women is something that's really it's really awesome when you come by it, because I feel here with my team, it is a lot of guys, but we do have some women on it as well, that they're really good at empowering women. They're really good at valuing for what you have, because a lot of places where you go, the leadership values your abilities, but when it comes to your personality, what I find with women, that's where they draw the line. Because let me explain. Your abilities are, for me, for example, I am administration. I am type A personality. I can do something and I'm going to get it done. Like, that's how I am. So my abilities can bring me up to a different level. But because of my personality, which could be seen as some weakness with the crying or the, I'm not saying all women cry. I'm just saying that the women tendencies as my personality is what holds me back from some things. And
in a
male-dominated thing. So realizing that men need to value the abilities and the personality, and for women to value her own personality as well. And I feel like here in my workplace, in my culture, that it is valued, that my abilities and my personality is both valued, that I'm not expected to be like a man or to lead like a man.
The question here is, how does a man then support his woman, if you will, who has a heart for leading in ministry? So let's say you have all these personalities to lead in ministry, but I don't. I'm the guy.
Right.
And that seems a little awkward. How can the male, those who are watching today, whose wife or girlfriend really has a heart for, how can they be encouraged, or the men encourage those women?
I would just say be confident in who you are, because if you aren't confident, that's when you start to feel threatened. That's when you start to feel like, you know, the bread maker thing. You know, I'm going to bring home the bread and I'm going to do all that. And then how guys sometimes feel, you know, insecure when the woman's the one bringing in most of the money into the family. That does fall over into even ministry, that if the guy's not confident in who he is in Christ and who God's created him to be, that he's not called into full-time ministry. Knowing that he is confident in who he is allows him to fully be able to support his wife and what she does.
This is true, because I as you say that, I think about men who find themselves threatened by strong women.
Yeah.
If you take a man and he makes this comment and he acts this particular way, he's seen as strong and independent. You take a woman who says the same, it's considered out of line. It's considered. So I would say that's an obstacle for you.
Right, because pursuit in a male is considered, oh wow, they're going after it. They're entrepreneurial. They want to do that. They're willing to do anything to see it be done. But when you see that kind of pursuit in a woman, it's seen as, I mean,
overly
you've heard
aggressive.
people talk about it. It's that woman at that business was so whatever. But if it was a male doing the same thing.
That word that rhymes with witch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And that's unfortunate. So that's an obstacle. What are some advantages of being a woman in ministry?
I mean, without saying negative things about the man, but just saying that, you know, women generally aren't just thinking about how it's going to affect themselves. They're thinking about, you know, the mama instinct of how is this decision going to affect my whole team, and having the vision, because women usually tend to have vision and to be able to go after things, and being willing to, you know, make sacrifices, and being able to just go after stuff full force. And honestly, I've learned a lot from this book.
What's that?
I just wanted to see Powerful and Free. It's by Danny Silk. So a lot of the stuff I'm saying is coming from here, just because it's really powerful, and it actually goes into the scriptures.
Where can they get that? Amazon?
Yeah, Amazon, anywhere.
Powerful and Free.
Yeah, Powerful and Free. And also there's Fashioned to Reign, which is by Chris Valentin. So that's Fashioned to Reign by Chris Valentin, and Powerful and Free. But this is the one I've been using. I just read it recently, and it's powerful. I mean, all those Bible verses that go into saying, you know, everybody's talking about women should be quiet in church.
I have those pulled up here. We'll talk about those if we get to them
right,
here.
and so it goes in and it actually goes into the context and, you know, the time of when that was written, and going through, and I mean, it's very intellectually
So you're suggesting
sound.
this book is for men?
Yeah. So many people see books for women in ministry and assume that it's just for women. But I encourage you that if you want to have a successful ministry, if you want to be successful in your marriage, I mean, all of this stuff is powerful. For a man to know how to empower a woman, it's priceless. And for a man to be willing to carry around a book that says stuff about empowering women is great.
Apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers, are they all available to women?
Yeah.
Okay. But you're saying that a female apostle, though she would have the same end game in mind as a male, that they might come to that from two
Go
different
about
directions.
it differently. Yeah, because women do things differently.
And one is not right,
right.
and one is not wrong.
My way or the highway doesn't really work in this situation. But it comes down to the way we were raised. Everybody was raised to, if I named off apostle, Sunday school teacher, worship leader, greeter, pastor, teacher, small group leader, all of these things, I'm sure I could list off the ones that you thought of woman and the ones you thought of man.
Sure.
It's just assumed that women are the worship leader, the teacher maybe, or the Sunday school teacher, but men are never assumed to be those roles. But
Men
when
are the
I say
ushers.
apostles and ushers, you automatically think of men.
Right.
And it's not even like it might not even be your conscious, it might be your subconscious. But the goal is to go into our subconscious and say, what do I actually think about women? Do I believe a woman could be a senior leader? That's a whole nother thing. I'm sure people think that all the time. Like, women are made to be pastors' wives, but some women are made to be the leader, and some men are great, co-leaders and come up alongside them. But you look at Heidi Baker. Mm-hmm. She is the head of her organization, and her husband Roland comes alongside her. That she is the head. And
you hear Heidi Baker,
yeah.
Heidi Baker, and you say, "Who's her husband?" A lot of people go,
"Right."
What? Who?
And it's just knowing that women can senior lead things. They can be the pastor. They can be the senior leader. They can be the head of an organization. And for some, that completely ruins their paradigm.
What do you think the church looks like going forward with both men and women leading? Well, I think that it would look a lot better. It would look like healthier. It would be perhaps more stable. I think I can move around. If I only had one leg, I could still get around. But if I have both my legs, some of it taking the weight when the other isn't and so forth, I think we'll move faster and with more agility. I've seen this in my own life, being married now for 30 years, and having you now alongside of the church in your leadership role, that women bring a whole new, not whole cloth, but bring a pretty different perspective to life and to ministry, and where you've talked about in general women's personalities, in general men's personalities might be a little more aggressive and so forth, where a woman would say, hey, wait a second, have you thought that might hurt their feelings?
Right.
I'm like, what are you talking about feelings here? We're talking about conquering the hill, but we have to remember that as men, we're leading congregations that are half women. And likewise, as a woman would be a leader, she'd have to say to herself, half of my congregation is male-oriented too.
Yeah, and I think that's like going forward with this as, the vision of men and women. I think it looks like having men and women co-lead, having them go and having teams be, half women, half men, and not being like five women, 6 men. We need to add another one, Women,
so you're not in favor of quotas?
No, I'm not in favor of quotas. I'm in favor of, having God's vision portrayed in our life. And that looks like, once you add women into the possibility of,
we have women in our apostolic team. We have women
Right.
in our deacon team. Not because we say, oh, we have to have a woman. We say there's a talent, there's an anointing, there's a skill there, regardless of whether it's male or female. We recognize that anointing and say, let's
Right.
place that person in a
and
position.
that they're brought into that, not because they're male or female, but because of their position. But once you add females into that perspective of being able to raise them up, you raise them up because of their abilities, because of their calling. But when women aren't even in the picture, you now are faced with, there's all these men, and now you're raising men to where they might not even supposed to be. Just because they are a man, it might show equality, but God has designated certain females to be in positions, but men are there because women weren't even in the choice.
Right. Some questions are rolling in. You mentioned some scriptures that were talked about in the book. The one that I most often hear is from 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 11. A woman should learn in quietness and full submission. Verse 12. I do not permit women to teach or to have authority over a man. And I think to myself, well, people take that literally, but then they don't use the rest of the verse, which says she must be silent. If she must be silent, that means she must be silent.
Right.
Not say anything.
Right.
Be quiet. Don't say anything. Oh, wait a second. We need you to teach Sunday school, and we need you to do these other things. So we need you to talk when we want you to.
Right.
So I see some inconsistencies in the way in which people interpret that. And in fact, the Message Bible, I don't know if you ever read that scripture in the Message Bible. I like how it says, verse 12, speaking of women, they should study to be quiet and obedient along with everyone else. So in other words, we're teaching doctrine, and so women, you need to be, we're including you now, which is Christianity, not Judaism. We're saying, women, you're included. There's neither male nor female. So we're including you, but we're asking you, hey, you be quiet like these guys are being quiet while teaching is happening so that we can teach the doctrine that we need to teach.
Right, yeah, definitely. And within that verse, whenever at the beginning of the verse, like the women should not teach, all that kind of stuff.
Or usurp, as they say, or take the authority.
Yeah, but if you research that verse, it actually talks about, it's saying that because there's false doctrine. There was a cult in that area at that time, and there were women coming around the temple and saying things and preaching the things of that cult. And so these women were saying things that weren't doctrinally sound. And so Paul in that time is actually talking to them, saying, you do not need to teach here because what you're saying isn't right.
It's a message to Timothy saying, hey, these women need to be quiet here in this particular thing, in this particular instance, rather than taking that particular scripture and building an entire doctrine around women not doing something. What we do is we take the whole counsel and say this would be what we believe is the full counsel of God. There is neither male nor female, slave or free. So we're all in this together. We all can be anointed. We can all preach. We can all teach. And though we are different, we've talked clearly for the last 45 minutes about how they're different. In this regard, God says, no, you can be anointed to preach. You can be anointed to teach. Apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, teacher. Is as much for you as it is anyone else.
Right. I mean, when Jesus came to the earth, he, personified that when, he's talking to the women at the well. I mean, he's going against everything culturally, talking to women, touching women, doing things like that, going against everything culturally that was preached then. But saying that, I mean, the first time that he revealed himself as the Messiah in John 4 was to the woman at the well. So she became the first evangelist.
And after the resurrection to Mary.
In all four Gospels, it said that she was the first one there.
She was the first one to go tell other people.
And so that he is entrusting great things to the women because the women are having this wisdom and they have the hunger to go share this with people. And that it's the New Testament. It's when baptism was initiated.
Can you imagine that when Mary, after the resurrection, came to the disciples and they said, no, be quiet. No, we can't hear you.
Right.
La, 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 we can't hear you. You're not allowed to talk.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy.
It is crazy.
In that time, I mean, the circumcision and the uncircumcision is just, that's what made you, a legitimized follower of Christ, a legitimized person. But when baptism came into the play, and that women could be baptized, knowing that showed their obedience, their faith, their righteousness, that's something that they never had before. That was something that they could only have by marrying a circumcised man, or by having boys that could be circumcised, that they could never have that legitimized faith before baptisms came into the play.
We see in the pastoral epistles, we see Priscilla and Aquila, we see female pastors of home churches.
Even female deacons.
Yeah. So there, for those, and I got to be careful here because I am a guy, and I don't want to bash guys, but I need to say this, that oftentimes when there is a struggle like this, it's a struggle over power and position and prestige. That I don't need you. You're supposed to listen to me. I'm the boss here. And if I can use any tool necessary to keep you there so that I'm in a dominant position, I'll do that. And unfortunately, the Word of God has been twisted in many regards to keep women in a subservient manner so that men can feel better about themselves.
Yeah, and I feel like that, sadly enough, is true in the church. I know that it's true sometimes in the business world, but when you go out into the business, you do see women that, they tried to make it in the church. They couldn't be seen as a leader, so they go out and they start their own business. In the business world, women are CEOs. Women do these things, but it seems that in the church, women aren't qualified to be senior pastors. But it's like, what if women were empowered in the church, that they could lead things, and not just women ministries? It's like saying you can lead, but only in this area for your people.
Right.
That's not freedom, and God's about freedom and saying, I trust you to lead the church, or I trust you to do these things.
Welcome to Kent Jackson, a good pastor friend of ours who is just an encouragement to us. We welcome Pastor Kent to the chat room. I understand he's in there right now, so we want to give a shout out to Pastor Kent. Gosh, I'll tell you, I'm learning some things. I'm encouraged. What you just said reminds me of your mother. When we first began ministry back in the day, as they say, and she decided that she wanted to be involved in ministry, because I was always, go ahead. No. She says, okay, I will do women's ministries. I'll be in charge of women's ministries. But this is what she said. These were her words. She says, I don't want to sit around and make potholders. I want to lead strong women. Mm-hmm. And I see that in the women's group here at the church. I see that in you, in the comments that you just made. And I'd like you to take just a minute to encourage women, okay? Just look right out there at these women that are feeling perhaps a little trodden down.
Yeah.
And say, man, I don't feel like I'm really be given a fair crack at this. And I want you to tell them maybe how it is that you came to a place of saying, I'm as valuable as anybody else in the kingdom. Mm-hmm. And just tell them your journey. Yeah,
well, I want to encourage you and let you know that you can do that. And this is something God's called you to do. So, you can just fulfill God's will for your life. And if you're in a place that doesn't really support you, doesn't really believe a woman can be in ministry, I would encourage you to find a place.
There you go. That's a key.
It's hard. I'm not telling you to leave your church. I'm not telling you to go and tell your pastor that I told you to leave your church. I'm just saying that if you're called to ministry, and even if you aren't called to ministry, but you don't feel like your church or your ministry is empowering women, you need to know that you aren't getting everything that God has to offer you. So find a place, find people that believe women can be in ministry, and associate yourself with them. Find other powerful women, and together you can go after that fully. Definitely.
And finding a man who will stand with you shoulder to shoulder, because oftentimes a woman who just kind of goes out there and muscles her way and says, women, is seen as this Jezebel, right. I'm going to take control. Right. And that's unfair, mm-hmm. but that's the reality. So as you said, find a pastor, find a ministry, find leadership in a church that embraces women in ministry, whether it be apostolic, prophetic, pastoral, evangelist, teachers, mm-hmm. whatever, and say, women, you are valuable.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Let's see. Any other questions coming in here? I don't see. Last one. How is it that you lead like a woman? What does that mean when you say lead like a woman?
It's just knowing that you don't have to, you see a man leading in the way he does things, that it doesn't have to be done right that way, that it can be.
Are you pressured to lead like a man?
Sometimes the world puts that pressure on you, that's so normal, for me to.
Because for so long we have been. Right. The
and then that's what's force. Seen as normal. That's what's seen as everyday life, as to lead like that. But knowing that I lead different than you, I lead different than my mom, that this doesn't fall into even just man and woman. It falls into you are your own person. Like God gave you abilities that other people don't have, and being able to lead who you are, because nobody else can lead how you are. You are you. You lead a certain way that nobody else does. So being able to do that. And to know that I'm not going to lead like you, that I'm going to be more reserved. I'm going to be more, think about everything before I go and do it and execute it differently than you may. But it doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means we're going after the same thing, but we're going to get there in different manners.
Can I give you an example? Last evening here at the church, there was a gathering. We had fun little men and women night combined. We have the Ironman, we have the Sisterhood, this men's group and this women's group.
Yeah.
Well, they came together last night for an event we called the Newlywed Game, and we had it all set up just like the old days on TV. So I had nothing to do with the planning, and your mom, my wife, said her ladies are kind of taking care of it. So I didn't know what to expect when I arrived. I knew that it started at 6:30. So I get here, and at 6:30, there's like 2 people in the auditorium. I thought, what in the world's going on? I go out in the foyer. There's food out there. Everybody's just meandering around. There's been no official start to the evening. It's just, and I'm on the inside, I'm like all riled up. I go directly to Cheryl. I go, what's going on? I said, this thing's supposed to start at 6:30. She goes, it is. I said, well, no, there's nobody in there. What's going on? She goes, oh, well, we just have this food and fellowship time for like, I said, well, for how long? Is it 10 minutes? When it winds down, when it's done. No, I need to know. And as you sat there and explained that, I just hearkened to last evening, just the clashing between your mother and I, and how I would have led that event versus how she led that event, and the coming together of those things, pretty crazy.
But both of them allow for different freedom for different people. I mean, sometimes yours is better for the people who need a plan and need to do it, but then knowing that when she does stuff, it allows for freedom in other areas to come up, that it isn't tied down to something.
And I didn't fight her, which is
Smart.
after being married 30 years. I said, okay, well, this is how you're going to do it, and we did it. And it was by the end of the evening, I would say it was an A+. It was an A+ evening, but it was not done the way I would have done it at all. Not wrong, but different. This is really the key for men and women getting along in ministry. Mm-hmm. Different is not wrong. Different is just different.
Yeah.
Any closing comments for our audience today where it relates to missions or women in ministry?
Not particularly, but if you do have any questions about the missions trips, you can always email me, and I can email you all the information or mail you a packet. I'll get back to you soon. So my email is office@fivefoldinternational.org.
Stop by the website, fivefoldinternational.org. Anything there will get to you as its director. Take a moment and tell them a little bit about school, and then we'll wrap things up.
School is every Monday night. Classes last for 8 weeks. So there's a new course every 8 weeks being offered, but we're offering 5 classes at once. So there's tons of options and a ton of ways to just be equipped, whether it's in evangelism, leadership, or just plain basic Bible knowledge. I mean, anything. We just offer that. And so we have some great teachers who are licensed with Fivefold teaching the classes, and it's a really, really great time. So we have new classes starting in March. So if you have any questions or want to know those classes, again, just go to fivefoldinternational.org.
All right. Well, this is Reformation Times. It's a monthly webcast that we do right here from the studios. And this month, I am pleased to have had Hannah Schafer, who is the director of our school, the director of Fivefold International altogether, and she's also a staff member of iWorship Center, where she's in charge of missions and a whole bunch of other stuff. And very thankful for you being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
It's been absolutely a delight to have you here. And until next month, just keep an eye on our Facebook page for next month's topic. God bless you, and have a great day.